in the Grays Harbor County Courthouse at Montesano in western Washington. A small bronze plaque lists the names of 6 men and relates with sinister brevity that they met their death in futile attempts to take the celebrated outlaw John Turno. This is the only tangible reminder of the most crafty and dangerous man ever to roam the timbered reaches of the Pacific Northwest, and by far the strangest outlaw I know of. Through some incomprehensible literary freak, Turno has never been the subject of a paper-backed biography of the Harry Tracy, Jesse James school, and the dime novel trade thus lost a surefire perennial. Hence, Turno's renown is purely local, where it has flourished mightily for 3 decades, and it is in no danger of dimming. Barrel-stove historians of the logging camps, some of whom saw Turno in the flesh, and others of whom were in at his death, keep the story alive and enhance it with the embroidery characteristic of folk tales. When winter gloom settles down over the still, vast forests of the Olympic Peninsula of western Washington, and stiff gales make logging operations dangerous, young loggers who have been brought up on Tarzan and Superman sit on camp decon seats and listen with awed respect to stories of the life and times of a human animal who combined in actuality many of the qualities of their comic strip heroes. In his own region, Turno has long since become a folk character, comparable to the mythical Paul Bunyan, and with some reason. The bare facts about Turno were enough to build a mountain of legend. What might be called the public life of John Turno began on September 3rd, 1911, an otherwise pleasant enough autumn day in the wild Grays Harbor country of western Washington. A reddish sun beat down through the blue smoke haze of settlers' clearing fires. Here and there in the vast wilderness, the toot and stutter of a logger's donkey engine could be heard. Blows of firewood drifted like snow in the air and got into the sourdough of the few trappers and prospectors in the region. Mostly, though, the region was untracked, without roads or trails, and silent except for the occasional bickering of jays and the report of some lone hunter's rifle. On that particular September afternoon, 2 rifle shots occurred, close together. If they were heard, no one paid them heed or gave thought to the matter until it was learned that the Bower twins, John and Will, had not returned from a bear hunt along the Satsop River. A few days later, Deputy Sheriff Colin Mackenzie, one of a large searching party, found the 2 bodies tucked away under some brush, side by side, on the upper reaches of the Satsop. Each had been shot once, and that through the forehead. John Turno was at once suspected of the double murder. Strange enough when you knew that Turno was blood uncle to the twins, but not so strange if you knew about Turno. This man was 32 years old in 1911. Born of a pioneer and respected family on the Turno homestead near Satsop Village, John had never, people said, been quite right in the head. From the time he began to walk, he had been most peculiar. Didn't care for human companionship at all. Wanted to be alone, especially alone in the woods. By the time he was 10, John was going into the timber along the Satsop and Wynoochee rivers and staying all night, sometimes for several days. His family tried to curb the youth's wildness, and his response was to stay away for a month. He told his parents that he found birds and animals better companions than men. He liked to listen to what he termed the talk of crows and jays, he said, and he also heard beautiful music, like that of organs and harps, in the winds that sifted through the tall fir and hemlock. On his lone trips into the woods, young Turno never carried any food. Got all the food he wanted from wild things, he said, roots, birds, animals. He always carried a rifle, and when he was 12, he could drill a Copenhagen snuff box at 100 yards. At home, he was moody. He did chores and other farm work under duress. He would not play with other children, not even with his brothers and sisters. I imagine he was what today would be called a retarded child. So his parents finally sent John to a private sanitarium in Vancouver, Washington. Here he proved so hard to handle that he had to be removed, and was then committed to an institution in Salem, Oregon. Though he was watched rather closely, one morning late in 1909, nurses found his bed empty. It hadn't been slept in. Turno left no connecting trail, but within a few weeks of his escape from Salem, which is nearly 200 miles from the Satsop, trappers reported seeing him some 25 miles up the Satsop River. Turno told 2 of these woodsmen that he would never be locked up again. He asked them to take a message out to his folks. "You tell them," he said in his short, gruff way, "and you tell everybody else that none of them had better come after me. I'll kill anyone who does. These are my woods. I want to be alone." For almost 2 years, Turno lived on in the woods undisturbed, listening to those harps in the hemlocks, those arbor vitae organs, and communing with owls and cougars, a deranged and unlettered Thoreau without brains. His father died, and word of it was taken to his son by a trapper, who was on friendly or at least on speaking terms with him. John said he wouldn't go to the funeral, and he didn't, nor did he go a bit later when his mother died. The estate was left to the 6 Turno children, and John's share, some $1,700, was put in a Montesano bank, and John notified by the friendly trapper. "I don't want no money," said John. He stayed on in the woods. Such was the status of Turno on that September day when his nephews, the Bauer twins, were found dead. It was surmised that the twins had been sighted by Turno, and that he may have thought they were searching for him to take him back to the hated sanitarium. And Turno, as was later to become very evident, was a man of direct action.